Hello, welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and in this video I am going to be wrapping up the books that I've read this past week for March Mystery Madness. But first, I need to give you the answer to yesterday's My March Mystery Madness Mindbender. The clue was, this series features a quadriplegic criminologist. Name the first book in the series. And the first book in that series is The Bone Collector. It's by Jeffrey Deaver, and the criminologist protagonist in that book is Lincoln Rhyme. I've read a number of books in that series a while ago, and then I think I just forgot about it in the midst of all the other books to read, but I did quite enjoy it. The Bone Collector was very interesting, and it was very interesting having a quadriplegic criminologist as a protagonist. I thought that was very interesting. I don't have a copy of the book to show you, but I'm going to I'll insert a picture of it here for you. Stay tuned to the end of the video for the next My March Mystery Madness Mindbender. I had a pretty good week of reading this week. I read 6 books. The first book I finished, I showed you in last week's video. I don't have a copy of it. I had to take it back to the library. It was called Elevator Pitch by Linwood Barclay, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I've never read anything by Linwood Barclay. I think it was a pretty classic thriller. It was about someone was manipulating elevators in New York, controlling the elevators in order to kill people on them, causing mass panic. It was pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. It was an interesting story, interesting characters, and yeah, I quite enjoyed it. The next book that I finished was 8 Perfect Murders. There we go. 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. Again, I've never read anything by Peter Swanson, but I picked this up at the library. It was one of the, they call them popular picks. They're new releases, and you can take them out for a shorter period of time, no holds, all that kind of thing, so that more people can get to them quicker. And it just caught my attention. The title primarily caught my attention, and so then I read the synopsis, and it sounded so interesting. Years ago, bookseller and mystery aficionado Malcolm Kershaw compiled a list of fiction's most unsolvable murders, which he titled 8 Perfect Murders, chosen from among the best of the best, including Agatha Christie's The ABC Murders, Patricia Highsmith's Strangers on a Train, and Ira Levin's Death Trap. But no one is more surprised than Mal, now the owner of the Old Devil's bookstore in Boston, when an FBI agent comes knocking on his door one snowy day in February. She's looking for information about a series of unsolved murders that look eerily similar to the killings on Mal's old list. And the agent isn't the only one interested in this bookseller who spends almost every night at home reading. The killer is out there, watching his every move, a diabolical threat who knows way too much about Mal's personal history, especially the secrets he's never told anyone, even his recently deceased wife. To protect himself, Mal begins looking into possible suspects and sees a killer in everyone around him. But Mal doesn't count on the investigation leaving a trail of death in its wake. Suddenly, a series of shocking twists leaves more victims dead, and the noose around Mal's neck grows so tight he might never escape. So there was a lot of things in that synopsis that caught my attention. I enjoy books that are set in bookstores or with booksellers. That caught my attention. And this list of 8 Perfect Murders, that caught my attention because there was authors on that list that I quite enjoy. So one thing, they do say early on in the book what is on this list. And I think that's actually probably a good thing, because this book is not afraid of spoiling all 8 of those books on that list. So if there are books on that list that you haven't read yet and you want to, I would recommend that you read them before you read this book because it just spoils away in this story. But if you've already read them, then it can be very entertaining. I ended up only giving this book 3 stars. I guessed who the killer was, I guessed a lot of the twists, and I think that's probably just because I've read so many mysteries. But I think this is a good pick for March Mystery Madness. It was published in 2020 and it had a page count of 270 pages. So there was some prompts there that it filled. However, I didn't end up using it for my bingo sheet because I already had books for those prompts. But yeah, it was a mystery, certainly. And then I read Statue of Limitations by Kate Collins. This is a read-along, I think Di from Di's Hearts 19, I think is her channel name. This is the book for her book club, and there was, you know, a group for it on Goodreads. So I joined in to read for this read-along. It's a cozy, and I don't read a ton of cozies. This one is set in the United States, in Michigan. And again, I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. It wasn't the best book I've ever read. It was fine. There were certain things that annoyed me in this book, but they are the things that kind of tend to annoy me anyway in cozies. The way amateur sleuths behave, the way they kind of get themselves involved in an investigation, choose to break the law whenever they feel like it, or, you know, behave in odd ways with strangers in a time when they should be taking extra care. Those types of things, you know, really annoy me, but it is hard for me to find a cozy where those things don't happen, so it's kind of, you know, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But anyway, in this story, after her divorce, Athena has returned to coastal Michigan to work in her family's garden center and raise her son, while also caring for a mischievous wild raccoon and fending off her family's annoying talent for nagging. Working alone at the garden center one night, Athena is startled by a handsome stranger who claims to be the rightful owner of a valuable statue her grandfather purchased at a recent estate sale. But she has even bigger problems on her plate. The powerful Talbot family, from whom her papu, I'm not sure how to say that, bought the statue, her grandfather, is threatening to raise the shops on Green Street's Little Greece to make way for a condo. The recent death of the family's patriarch already seemed suspicious, but now it's clear that a murderer is in their midst. Athena will have to live up to her warrior goddess namesake to protect her family from a killer and save their community from ruin. Then I read Bruno, Chief of Police by Martin Walker, and I really enjoyed this one. This was set in France, which I found really interesting, and there was so much about how the police work there and kind of regional policing and all of that, which I found very interesting. This is the first in this series, and I will totally pick up more from this series. So Bruno, Chief of Police, this was published in 2008. Meet Bruno, amateur chef, foie gras connoisseur, bachelor about town, and in his spare time, it seems, Chief of Police. Of course, Bruno is the only police officer in sleepy Saint-Denis, a town in France's beautiful Dordogne region, known more for its caves at Lascaux than for its crime rate. In a typical week, Bruno's responsibilities include marshalling cantankerous veterans into a parade, making his own special vin de noix from local walnuts, and protecting the town's traditional cheeses from the pasteurizing influences of EU inspectors. He has a gun, but never wears it. He has the power to arrest, but hopes never to use it. Still, not every day is postcard perfect in Saint-Denis. When the elderly patriarch of an Algerian family is found murdered, Bruno must use his formidable investigative skills to restore peace to his beloved village. Marks on the body lead to immediate assumptions that the crime is racially motivated, and suspicion falls quickly on the local doctor's son, caught surrounded by Nazi paraphernalia. But Bruno knows his people better than to jump to quick conclusions, and sees a more complex explanation lurking in the memories and unsettled feuds of the German occupation during World War II. Now, one thing I picked up on right away was that this book felt very similar to the Hamish Macbeth books by M.C. Beaton, in that there is a single police officer in a small village with a long history who is perfectly content in his life. He doesn't want advancement. He is perfectly happy to stay in his village. He knows these people. He loves these people. He loves the area. So there was a lot of similarities that way with, I found, with the Hamish Macbeth books. But this is not a cozy. It's got cozy feels for sure, but it is a bit beyond a cozy. And it was really good. I quite enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the descriptions of the area and the people in the village. There was stuff about the resistance during the Second World War and how the effects of all of that are still felt today. So yeah, I can highly recommend this, and I am definitely going to keep reading in this series. Again, this is not one that I counted on my bingo sheet, but in order to make it fit for March Mystery Madness, it takes place in May, at least initially. Then I read 3 Graves Full by Jamie Mason. Now, this one I talked about earlier in the month on my video for how March is the 3rd month of the year. And so I talked about books that had 3 or 3rd in the title. And this one sounded so intriguing. And what I find so interesting about this book is it had so much potential. It could have been a 4-star read, possibly even a little more than that. But, okay, so let's get into this book. In this book, the main character, Jason Getty, confesses right from the beginning, right from the beginning, that he has buried a body on his property. You don't know the full story yet, except for the fact that Jason says very clearly that the person deserved it. It was also self-defense. So you know that he's living with a body on his property. He decides to do some landscaping, which is weird, first of all, because if he's trying to hide the fact that he's got a body on his property, why is he bringing in a company to do landscaping? Anyway, the body that he's buried is out back in his property, and he's got this landscaping company to do some work around the front. And what do they discover? 2 dead bodies buried in his front yard, and Jason is freaking out. So this is like such a great premise. I was so excited to read this book. But this book would probably be classified as a literary mystery, and that is exactly what I did not like about this book. The author spent far too much time trying to put in this flowery language, taking a paragraph to describe the bile rising in his throat. You know what? I can't be bothered with that in a mystery. It slows down the pace, it reduces the tension, and it seriously disappointed me in this book. And a little bit of that is fine, but there was just far too much of it, and I really did not like it. I kept reading though, because she would have these moments that were just great in a mystery. So you have the 2 bodies that have been dug up in the front yard. You have Jason freaking out about what to do about the body that he's buried in the backyard. And then there is this one great scene where people connected, 3 people connected to all 3 of these bodies, meet up in the dark. They each are coming with their own history and their own current problems and immediate needs, and it is a great scene of confusion and violence, and it was so good. And so those scenes every once in a while would be interspersed, and they kept me going to finish this book. The other thing that drove me crazy was one of the police officers has a dog. Perfectly fine, that's great. And if the dog just did what dogs do, which is, you know, protect their owners, smell things that humans can't smell, all of that would have been fine. And if she had just left it with that, that would have been good, and that she could have worked that into the story. But she chose periodically to tell the story from the dog's point of view, and that drove me crazy. Because we do not know what the dog's point of view would be, okay? And okay, I don't have a dog, and I'm not a dog owner, and if you are, that's great. But we do not actually know what dogs are thinking. And she attributed thoughts and feelings and actions to a dog that we just don't know are true. And like, there were points when the dog was like, I understand physics, I understand gravity. What? So yeah, that part just drove me crazy. So in the end, I gave it 3 stars because the story here had so much potential, and it did keep me going to the end, but she just wrecked it with all the literary stuff and the point of view of the dog. So, I mean, go ahead and read it if it sounds interesting to you, but I don't know. Can someone else take this premise and write a better story? Because I would read that. Then I finished An Instance of the Fingerpost by Iain Pears. This is a huge book. It has got 685 pages, but it is 685 pages of a fantastic story. I have a lot that I want to say about this book, so I am actually going to do a separate review. Look for that coming up on Wednesday, and please watch it because this is such a great book. I have so much that I want to say about this book. So those are the books that I read this week. Here is my current updated bingo card. As you can see, I have got another bingo. I have not gotten a blackout yet. 3 of the books that I read this week weren't ones that I could include on the bingo card, unfortunately, but that's okay. I'm going to keep going. We still have enough time. Here's an update on the words that I've been keeping track of. All the books that I've been reading for March Mystery Madness, I have been writing down the word that I find in the 5th chapter on the 5th page, 5th line, 5th word. So I've been keeping track of all the words in the hopes that by the end of the month I can make a complete sentence. But as you can see from the possibilities here, I am in desperate need of a verb. So we will see how things go. I am currently reading Sacrifice by Sharon Bolton. I'm about halfway through and I'm enjoying it. This is a reread for me, and it fits the prompt of page divisible by 5. So it will be one that can count on my bingo card, which is great. One very bizarre thing about this edition, this is the Minotaur Signature edition. I'm reading along, and then all of a sudden on page 19, it does not make sense anymore. And that is because this entire page of text is from a different Sharon Bolton book. And what makes it even more confusing is that there is a character that's the same. So there's a Sergeant Dana Tulloch in Sacrifice, and in Now You See Me, which is where that page of text is from, I even found it and marked it here onto the next page here. It's the same character. She is now an inspector, I think, or a DCI, but it's Dana Tulloch. So seeing the same name on the page causes so much confusion, but as you're reading it, it is pretty clear that this is not the same story. So weird, right? But also, I'm missing an entire page of this story, and I'm glad it happened so early on, because what if it had happened at the end in the climax? That would have been just terrible. So does anybody else have this edition? Isn't this weird? Why didn't they pull these books? I don't know. Anyway, this is what I am currently reading. Here is the next My March Mystery Madness Mindbender. This immensely popular series about a black detective in Washington, D.C. have nursery rhyme titles for the first half of the series and titles which play on the main character's name for the second half. So put your answers down in the comment section down below. Also, let me know if you've read any of these books that I've talked about and what you thought of them. And tell me what you've been reading this week too. I'd love to chat about that down in the comments. And I'll see you tomorrow for another March Mystery Madness video. Bye!